Imagine buying your dream mountain home, the place you've saved for, sacrificed for, finally yours. You're standing on the porch, coffee in hand, breathing in the crisp pine air, when a stranger pulls up your driveway with a sheriff and says, "You're trespassing." Within 48 hours, your locks are changed. Your name is on the deed, but the law says you don't exist. The man claiming your home? A bitter relative with a forged document, and a lawyer who knows exactly how to weaponize it. What follows is a nightmare of intimidation, legal warfare, and obsession. A battle that turns one quiet homeowner into a relentless fighter. Stay to the end. Because this isn't just a story about fraud, it's about revenge, justice, and how one person turned a stolen home into the ultimate symbol of victory. My story doesn't start with lawyers and threats. It starts with a fantasy I'd been holding onto for about a decade. I've always been drawn to the mountains, the quiet, the crisp air, the feeling of being a small part of something massive and ancient. While my friends were chasing careers in busy cities, I was saving every penny for a little cabin, a project I could call my own. I wasn't looking for some pristine move-in-ready palace. I wanted a place with history and flaws. I wanted a fixer-upper. For years, browsing real estate websites was my nightly ritual. It was like a form of meditation. I looked at A-frames buried in snow, log cabins on forgotten lakes, and little stone cottages that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. I knew exactly what I wanted. Wood beams, a stone fireplace, and enough land that I couldn't see my neighbors. I wanted a project that would challenge me. A house that needed me as much as I needed it. After 2 years of seriously searching, I found it. The listing was almost funny in its honesty. It was a rustic mountain retreat in need of significant TLC. The photos were rough, peeling paint, a sagging porch, and landscaping so overgrown it looked like the forest was trying to eat the house. To most people, it was a hard pass. To me, it was perfect. It was a 2-story, chalet-style home from the late 60s, perched on the side of a hill and surrounded by pine and aspen trees. The agent told me the same family had owned it for 50 years. The original owners had passed, and their kids, who lived out of state, had finally decided to sell. It had been sitting vacant for at least 2 years, which explained the neglect. The first time I saw it in person, I was completely hooked. Walking through the dusty rooms, my footsteps echoing in the silence, I didn't see cobwebs or faded wallpaper. I saw potential. I pictured myself curled up by that massive stone fireplace with a fire crackling. I saw the disastrous kitchen, with its avocado green appliances, transformed into a bright modern space. I stepped out onto the back deck, which creaked ominously, and looked out over the breathtaking valley below. That was it. I was done. This was my house. The buying process was surprisingly easy. My financing was in order, and my offer was accepted almost right away. I did all my homework, of course. The home inspection came back with a long list of issues, but none of it was a surprise for a house its age. The wiring was old, the plumbing needed work, the roof had a few years left in it, at best. Everything was documented, and I planned my renovation budget accordingly. Most importantly, I got a title report. You know, where a company researches public records to make sure the seller is the legal owner and that there are no hidden claims on the property. It's supposed to be your shield against exactly what was about to happen to me. The report came back clean. It showed a clear chain of ownership from the original family to the estate selling it. No liens, no easements that weren't disclosed, no drama. I even bought the premium title insurance policy, which is supposed to protect you financially if someone crawls out of the woodwork later with a claim. I thought I had checked every single box. I thought I was protected. Closing day was incredible. I signed a mountain of paperwork and they handed me a set of old tarnished keys. I drove straight to the house with a car full of cleaning supplies and a sleeping bag, ready to spend my first night in my new home. That first week was pure bliss. I spent my days pulling up old carpets, scrubbing walls, and making endless project lists. I'd take breaks to just sit on the porch, drinking coffee and listening to the wind in the trees. I felt this profound sense of accomplishment. This was real. This was mine. The stress, the anxiety, it all just melted away. I did notice one odd thing, though. On the third day, I found one of my pry bars wasn't where I left it. I'd set it by the fireplace, but I found it outside, near the edge of the woods, with a little mud on it. I figured I'd just been tired and misplaced it, but a small, unsettling feeling lingered. I chalked it up to being alone in a new, unfamiliar place. I was home. I had no idea I was living on borrowed time, and that my dream was about to become a full-blown nightmare. It was a Tuesday morning, 8 days after I closed. I was up on a ladder, scraping stubborn wallpaper in the living room, when I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I figured it was a neighbor wanting to introduce themselves. I climbed down, wiped my dusty hands on my jeans, and went to the door with a friendly smile ready. That smile died the second I opened the door. On my porch were two men. One was in his late 60s or early 70s, with a grim, weathered face and resentful eyes that scanned past me to the house. The other was younger, maybe mid-40s, wearing a tailored suit that looked completely out of place up here. This was not a friendly visit. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice suddenly cautious. The man in the suit stepped forward. No smile, just cold professionalism. "Are you the current resident of this property?" "I'm the owner," I said, with a flash of pride that now feels naive. "I just bought it last week." The two men exchanged a look, a quick, knowing glance that sent a knot of ice into my stomach. The lawyer, and my brain was screaming that he had to be a lawyer, opened his briefcase with a crisp snap. "My name is Arthur Croft," he said, handing me a card that felt like a death sentence. "I am legal counsel for Mr. Elias Vance." He gestured to the older man, who was staring at my house with a possessive glare that made my skin crawl. "I'm afraid there's been a significant misunderstanding. Mr. Vance is the legal owner of this property. We have a deed that predates your purchase, and I'm here to inform you that you are in fact trespassing." I just stared at him. The words didn't make sense. They sounded like a foreign language. Trespassing. My mind flashed to the clean title report, the insurance, the deed with my name on it sitting in a file box in my car. This had to be some kind of sick joke, a scam. I don't understand," I stammered, my heart starting to pound. "I just bought this house. I went through a title company. Everything is legal. I have the deed." Mr. Croft let out a condescending sigh, as if explaining a simple concept to a child. "That's a problem for you and your title company. Our position is clear. My client, Mr. Vance, holds the rightful title, inherited from his late brother. It was never part of the estate that was sold. The sale was illegitimate." He pulled a thick document from his briefcase and held it out. "This is a copy of Mr. Vance's quitclaim deed, filed 3 years ago at the county recorder's office. It establishes his ownership. We also have a court order demanding you vacate the premises immediately." My hands were shaking as I took the paper. It looked terrifyingly official. Stamps, signatures, legal jargon I couldn't possibly understand. But the words Elias Vance and the property description were crystal clear. The blood drained from my face. How was this possible? "This is impossible," I whispered, looking from the paper to their stony faces. "My title search was clean. This would have shown up." "Perhaps you should have hired a more competent firm," Croft said coldly. "We are giving you 48 hours to remove your belongings. If you're still here after that, we will have the sheriff's department escort you off the property." Panic, hot and sharp, shot through me. I'd poured my entire life savings into this place. I couldn't just leave. "You can't just throw me out," I said, my voice rising with a mix of fear and indignation. "I have a deed. I have a mortgage. I have rights." For the first time, the older man, Elias Vance, spoke. His voice was a low growl, steeped in bitterness. "You own nothing. This house was my brother's. It's my house now. Those greedy kids you bought it from had no right to sell it. It wasn't theirs to sell. This is Vance land." There was a venom in his voice that had nothing to do with me. I was just collateral damage in a family feud I knew nothing about. "I am advising you not to be difficult," the lawyer added, his tone sharpening. "Your claim is with your title insurer. I suggest you pursue that avenue for financial restitution. But as for this property, you have no claim. We will be back on Thursday morning. I expect you to be gone." They turned, walked back to their pristine sedan, and drove away, leaving me on the porch of my dream home, holding a paper that said, "My dream was a lie." The peace I'd felt in the mountains just minutes before now felt menacing. The wind in the pines sounded like a whisper of threats. The next 48 hours were a blur of frantic phone calls and escalating terror. I called my real estate agent, who was shocked and promised to make some calls. I called the title company, my voice trembling with fear and rage. The first representative I spoke to was infuriatingly calm, telling me it was probably a misunderstanding and to just forward the documents. When I read the details from the quitclaim deed, including the filing date, there was a long, worrying pause on the other end of the line. He promised an immediate investigation, a phrase that I would come to learn meant absolutely nothing. I didn't sleep. The house no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a trap. Every creak and groan of the old structure made me jump. The following afternoon, as I was frantically trying to pack my most important belongings, I saw a dusty pickup truck, the same one Elias Vance had been in, drive slowly past the house, then turn around at the end of the road and drive past again. The message was clear. They were watching. Later, I went outside to load a box into my car and found a crude, hand-painted, "No trespassing" sign nailed directly into one of the support posts of my porch. It was a violation, a deliberate act of intimidation meant to unnerve me. It worked. True to his word, on Thursday morning, Mr. Croft returned. This time, he had a sheriff's deputy with him. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would break. The deputy, a man named Miller, was polite but firm. He had a tired, sympathetic look in his eyes, but his duty was clear. I pleaded with him. I showed him my deed, my closing documents, the keys in my hand. "Officer, please," I begged. "I just bought this. My name is on the deed recorded last week at the county office. Can't you just verify that?" He looked at my papers sympathetically, but just shook his head. "Ma'am, I understand your position, and I'm sorry you're in it. But this is a civil matter. It's a title dispute. You need to get a lawyer. Right now, I have a court order based on a deed that was filed 3 years ago. It supersedes your claim until a judge says otherwise. I have an order that says you have to leave." I was defeated, humiliated. Standing on the side of the road with a few boxes and my sleeping bag, I watched as a locksmith, hired by Croft, methodically changed the locks on my front door. My home had been stolen from me in broad daylight, with the law itself as the weapon. The next few weeks were the darkest of my life. I put my things in storage and moved into a cheap, soul-crushing motel by the highway. The air smelled of stale smoke and disinfectant. I felt betrayed, foolish, and utterly powerless. But then, slowly, hour by hour, day by day, the fear started to curdle into a cold, hard anger. They thought I would just roll over and disappear. They didn't know me at all. This wasn't just about money or a piece of property. This was about justice. This was my home, and I was going to fight for it. Living in that depressing motel room, surrounded by the smell of despair, I decided I was done being a victim. It was time to fight. The title company was my first target. They had insured this transaction. They were supposed to be my shield. I called them daily, each time being passed to a new person who would promise to look into it and escalate my file. The promised payout for the insurance policy was their only solution, a check that would barely cover my purchase price, let alone my shattered dream and the costs I was now incurring. Frustrated, I drove an hour to their regional office. I walked in and refused to leave until I spoke with a manager. A man in a cheap suit finally came out and led me to a small windowless office. He offered me a bottle of water and a placid corporate smile. "I don't want a check. I want my house back," I said, my voice shaking with restrained fury. "Your company issued a report that said the title was clean. How did you miss a deed filed 3 years ago? How is that possible?" He gave me a practiced, evasive answer about complex record systems and potential clerical errors at the county level. He kept steering the conversation back to the insurance payout. "The policy is designed for exactly these rare situations," he began. "This isn't a situation," I interrupted, standing up. "This is my life." "You failed. Your company failed. And you are not going to dismiss me with a check and a lawsuit waiver. I want answers, and I want my home." I left his office knowing that they were not my allies. They were a corporation trying to mitigate their losses. I was on my own, I needed my own lawyer, a real fighter. I met with 3. The first 2 were discouraging, speaking of long, drawn-out legal battles with uncertain outcomes and hefty retainers. They advised me to take the insurance money and walk away. But the third one, her name was Helen. She was a seasoned real estate attorney in her late 50s, specializing in complex property disputes and title fraud. She had sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense vibe I trusted instantly. I laid out the whole sordid story for her, my voice cracking at times. I handed her the stack of documents, my deed, the title report, and the quitclaim deed from Croft. She studied the quitclaim deed for a long, silent moment, her brow furrowed. "This is a mess," she said finally, her voice flat. "But it's not hopeless. A quitclaim deed is often the weakest way to transfer property. It just says the person giving it up is releasing their claim, whatever that claim may be. It doesn't actually guarantee they had a valid claim to begin with." It was the first glimmer of real hope I'd had in weeks. "So what do we do?" I asked. "We go on the offensive," she said, a slight predatory smile touching her lips. "They're trying to win with intimidation. We're going to win with facts. We need to file a quiet title lawsuit." She explained this asks a judge to look at all the evidence and make a final binding decision on who the rightful owner is, quieting all other claims. It wasn't a simple mediation. This was a war, and we were going straight for a legal takedown. "This isn't a dispute, it's fraud," she stated. "It won't be fast, and it won't be cheap," she warned. "Are you ready for that?" "I am," I said, without a shred of hesitation. A week later, missing the mountains and desperate to see my house, I drove up the winding road. I parked down the street, my heart aching. And then I saw him. Elias Vance was sitting on my porch, in a rocking chair I had bought during my one happy week there. He was drinking a beer, surveying the property like a king. He saw my car, and a slow, cruel smirk spread across his face. He lifted his bottle in a mocking toast before turning away. The raw personal insult of it hit me like a physical blow. In that moment, any remaining fear vanished, replaced by a cold, diamond-hard resolve. He was not just in my house. He was enjoying my humiliation, and so our investigation began. It felt like I was in a legal thriller. Helen and her team pulled every document related to my property going back 100 years. Deeds, surveys, tax records, probate filings, and wills. We were building a bulletproof history of the land. The story that emerged was that the house was built by Elias Vance's older brother, Robert, and his wife. When they passed away within months of each other, their will clearly stated that their entire estate, including the house, was to be divided equally among their 3 children. Those were the people who sold me the house. So where did Elias's claim come from? The key was that quitclaim deed. It was dated 3 years ago, supposedly signed by a terminally ill Robert just a few months before he died, transferring the house directly to Elias for the nominal sum of $1. "If this document is legitimate," Helen said, tapping it with her pen, "the children never inherited the house, and they couldn't legally sell it to you. If it's fraudulent, the sale was valid, and the house is yours. So we have to prove it's a fake," I said. "Exactly." Croft, their lawyer, tried to stonewall us at every turn. He filed frivolous motions to delay the proceedings, claiming we were harassing his elderly and frail client. He sent over voluminous, intimidating discovery requests, demanding a decade of my personal financial records, hoping to bury us in paperwork and bleed me dry financially. Helen calmly swatted them all down. "It's a classic bully tactic," she told me. "He's trying to make this so painful you'll give up." We won't. Our first break came from the tax records. For 50 years, Robert Vance paid the property taxes. After his death, his estate paid them. Then, for the last year, I paid them. Never once had Elias Vance paid a dime in property taxes. If he thought he owned the house for 3 years, Helen mused, why didn't he pay the taxes? Why let the estate pay them? It was a strong circumstantial point, but not a knockout punch. Next, we deposed Robert's 3 children. They were scattered across the country and were furious. They said their uncle Elias had always been the black sheep, a grifter who was estranged from their father after a bitter argument over money decades earlier. "My father would never have given the house to Elias," his daughter said, tearing up during the deposition. "He built it with his own 2 hands for our family. He despised Elias and his greed." They provided us with letters from their father, written in his final year, lovingly talking about his hope that they would keep the house in the family. with no mention of giving it away to his estranged brother. But we still needed to definitively deal with that signature. After some legal wrangling, Helen forced Croft to produce the original quitclaim deed for inspection. She immediately sent it, along with dozens of known samples of Robert Vance's signature from bank checks and legal documents, to a top forensic handwriting expert. This was the turning point, the aha moment we had been working toward. I'll never forget Helen's call. I was in my motel room, eating instant noodles and feeling my hopes start to fade under the weight of the legal battle. "We got the report from the handwriting expert," she said, and I could hear the triumphant smile in her voice. "It's definitive. The signature on the quitclaim deed is a forgery, and not a particularly good one. There are clear signs of tracing, hesitation marks, unnatural pen lifts. It doesn't match Robert Vance's natural fluid signature at all." I dropped my fork. Relief so powerful it made me weak washed over me. I started to cry, huge heaving sobs of joy for the first time in months. "We've got him," I whispered. "We've got him," Helen confirmed. They built their entire case on a fraudulent document. This is felony-level title fraud. The final piece was a deep dive into Elias's finances. A private investigator Helen hired found he was deeply in debt, with multiple creditors and a failing business. This wasn't about preserving a family legacy, it was a desperate cash grab. He had forged the deed, likely planning to sit on it, and then sell the house himself after a few years. My buying it from the rightful heirs had simply forced his hand and exposed his scheme. We had everything. Helen scheduled a final settlement conference with Arthur Croft and Elias Vance. She called it a presentation of findings. They walked into the conference room looking smug and confident, completely unaware of the ambush that was about to unfold. Helen calmly, methodically laid out the entire history of the property. She detailed the children's testimony, the tax records showing Elias never paid a cent. With every new document she slid across the table, their confidence visibly drained away. Then she saved the best for last. "And finally," she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical hush, "we have the quitclaim deed itself." She slid the forensic expert's report across the table. "This is a 12-page report from one of the top document examiners in the country. To summarize, his professional conclusion is that the signature of Robert Vance is, and I quote, a crude and obvious forgery. He is, of course, prepared to testify to that in court." Silence. Deafening silence. Croft's face went white as a sheet. His hands trembled as he skimmed the report. Elias Vance just stared, his jaw slack. "That's a lie." Elias suddenly roared, slamming a fist on the mahogany table. "He's lying. My brother gave me that house. He knew I deserved it. This is all a trick." Croft put a hand on his client's arm, muttering, "Elias, shut up." His own composure completely shattered. Helen ignored the outburst and continued, her voice like ice. "Filing a fraudulent document with a government office is a felony. Attempting to seize property based on that fraud is another. So, you have two options. Option 1, we go to court. A judge will rule in my client's favor. The court will order you to pay all of my client's substantial legal fees. And then, I will personally hand this entire file to the district attorney and recommend criminal fraud charges, which could lead to prison time for both of you." She let that hang in the air for a long, torturous moment. "Or," Helen said, leaning forward, "there's option 2. You sign a document right now, relinquishing all claims to the property. You turn over the keys. You sign a confession of judgment for my client's legal fees and all her related expenses from the last several months. And you walk away. My client gets her house and her money back, and you avoid going to prison. You have 5 minutes to decide." It was the most brilliant, brutal checkmate I had ever seen. Those 5 minutes of silence were the sweetest of my life. I watched Croft frantically whispering to his client. Elias Vance looked broken. The blustering arrogance was gone, replaced by the pale, slack-jawed face of a scared old man who had gambled and lost spectacularly. The lawyer, Croft, looked like he was about to be physically ill. His career was flashing before his eyes. Croft cleared his throat. His voice was a weak, defeated croak. We accept option 2. Helen, without a word, slid the prepared documents across the table. They signed everything. They signed away any claim to my home. They signed a legal admission that they would pay for every penny I had spent on lawyers, investigators, motel rooms, and storage units. And just like that, after months of hell, it was over. When they were done, Croft, avoiding my eyes, pushed my old tarnished keys across the table. I picked them up. The metal felt cool and heavy and real. It was the best feeling in the world. The legal victory was absolute. The court entered the judgment a week later, officially declaring me the sole, rightful owner and extinguishing their fraudulent claim forever. Financially, I was made whole. But the real victory, the real revenge, wasn't about the money. My sweet revenge started the very next day. I drove up to the house, my house, and put my key in the lock a stranger had installed. I opened the door to my home. It was musty and silent, holding the stale energy of the thieves who had occupied it. I took a deep, cleansing breath and threw open all the windows, letting the crisp mountain air rush in, clearing out the nightmare. And then I got to work. The ultimate revenge was simply to live and to thrive in the very place they tried to steal from me. It was to take the dream they tried to crush and make it even better than I had ever imagined. Every swing of a hammer felt like an act of defiance. I tore out the old avocado green kitchen with a fury, installing beautiful new cabinets, gleaming quartz countertops, and warm hardwood floors. The living room where I had stood, terrified and helpless, became my sanctuary. I had the massive stone fireplace professionally cleaned and repaired. I bought a huge, comfortable sofa and placed it right in front of the picture window, a spot where I knew Elias Vance had sat and gloated. The work was hard, but every dollar I spent was a declaration of victory. I was pouring my happiness and my triumph back into these walls, erasing the stain of what they had done. And the best part, the money Elias Vance was forced to repay me, every last cent of my legal bills and expenses, freed up my own savings to go directly into the house. In a very real, very direct way, his attempt to steal my home was now funding its beautiful restoration. His greed was paying for my dream kitchen. His fraud was paying for my new deck. Now that is poetic justice. A few months later, I heard from Helen. Arthur Croft's legal career was in shambles. He was facing a disciplinary board hearing with the State Bar for his role in knowingly filing a fraudulent document. Elias Vance, forced to pay the judgment, was financially ruined. He had to sell his own home to cover the costs. He had gambled on a lie and lost everything. I didn't feel joy at his ruin, just a quiet, profound satisfaction that the system, as slow and painful and terrifying as it was, had worked. My sweet revenge is this. Every morning, I wake up in my beautiful mountain home. I make coffee in my dream kitchen. I sit on my new deck and look out at the same valley view that first stole my heart. The house is more than a house. It's a symbol of my own resilience. It has my sweat and my tears, and now my joy baked into its very foundation. They tried to take my home, but instead, they gave me a story. They gave me a strength I didn't know I had. And in the end, they had to watch me build my dream on the ashes of their greed. And that is the best revenge of all. So, what did I learn from all of this? I learned that home title fraud is a very real and growing problem, and you can be vulnerable even when you think you've done everything right. It taught me how critical it is to have an expert in your corner who knows how to fight back. But mostly, it taught me not to back down. The stress and feeling of hopelessness can be all-consuming. There were moments I wanted to just give up, but I am so glad I didn't. Your home is more than an asset. It's your sanctuary, and it's worth fighting for. So, if you enjoyed watching Justice Get Served, hit that subscribe button for more stories about fighting back. And I really want to hear from you. If you have your own nightmare neighbor or property dispute story, share it in the comments below. Let's create a community where we can share these experiences and learn from them. Thanks for watching.